The Late Great Planet Earth, Chapter 2. Men's curiosity searches past and future. T.S. Eliot. Chapter 2. When is a prophet a prophet? What would you think of prophets today who would be willing to stake their lives on the absolute truth of their claims? They could not allow themselves errors in judgment or mistakes in the smallest detail. There were such prophets. They were daring men, sure of the source of their faith and strong in their belief. There is a book which boldly documents the statements of these men. They are known as the prophets of Israel, and their writings have been miraculously preserved in the Bible. Passing the test. Are we able to trust these old prophets? What were their credentials? In a book of the Old Testament, Deuteronomy, Moses predicted that there would be many prophets who would come to the Jewish people, culminating in the final and greatest of all prophets, the Messiah. Moses anticipated a problem. How would people know whether a prophet who claimed to speak God's message was a true prophet? A question was asked of Moses, which is still being asked today. How may we know the word which the Lord has not spoken? Deuteronomy 18:21. And Moses gave the answer. The true test of a prophet. When a prophet speaks in the name of the Lord, if the word does not come to pass or come true, that is a word which the Lord has not spoken. Deuteronomy 18:22. Failure to pass the test of a true prophet was a bit severe. The only grade allowed was one of 100% accuracy. Anything less would doom the prophet to death by stoning, which was the method of capital punishment in those days. Deuteronomy 13:1-11. A Greek proverb says that the best guesser is the best prophet. If the prophets of Israel had been simply guessers, they would have had to take the cruel consequences, a slow and torturous death inflicted by flying stones. The prophets of Israel also pointed out to their people causes of current problems. This is never very popular. True prophets would not be likely to win the Most Beloved Citizen Award in their hometown. They not only made short-range predictions, which would be fulfilled during their lifetimes, but also projected long-range predictions about events far in the future. Often they didn't understand the significance of their own prophecies. 1 Peter 1:10-12. However, many of these prophecies are predictions of exact historical happenings which will lead to the end of history as we know it. The astonishing thing to those of us who have studied the prophetic scriptures is that we are watching the fulfillment of these prophecies in our time. Some of the future events that were predicted hundreds of years ago read like today's newspaper. Let's examine some selected Bible prophecies and apply the test of truth to them. Accurate short-range prophecy. Jeremiah, a prophet of Israel, was not vague in his prophecies. He told his people that Judah, the southern kingdom of Israel, would be invaded and destroyed by Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon. It was not a very cheerful prophecy, and Jeremiah probably didn't receive a standing ovation. He said that King Nebuchadnezzar would destroy the land, that it would be desolate. Jeremiah 25:9. Jeremiah was not the type to soft pedal. He prophesied that the capital city, Jerusalem, would be destroyed and that its people would lose their capacity to laugh. After he presented this miserable picture, Jeremiah foretold that any Jewish survivors would be carried off to Babylon as slaves. To compound the complexity of these predictions, he said that the Israelites would be Babylonian slaves for precisely 70 years. Jeremiah 25:11. At this point, Jeremiah would probably have won a contest for the man least likely to succeed in Israel. In fact, He made Pashur, one of the religious leaders of the time, so furious that Pashur beat him and put him in stocks. Jeremiah 20:2. Archaeology and ancient history confirm the fulfillment of Jeremiah's prophecy. Jerusalem was destroyed, Judah was laid waste, and her people were taken captive in Babylon for 70 years. Why did the Jewish people preserve the messages of Jeremiah? These messages, which foretold of their defeat and captivity, were an indictment against them. It was because Jeremiah passed the test of a prophet, which was established by Moses. As despised as Jeremiah was by his contemporaries, they did not dare destroy what they believed were God's words. Jeremiah was such a bearer of sad tidings that even today we speak of complaints as Jeremiads. An arrow in the armor. One of the lesser-known men of God who achieved a straight A in prophetic marksmanship was Micaiah. However, this was not a time when such perfection was awarded with a gold pin and guard, or a seal on Micaiah's diploma. On the contrary, he was thrown into prison and fed bread and water. What did he do to deserve such treatment? Micaiah lived at a time when a good king, Jehoshaphat, was reigning in the southern kingdom of Judah. In the northern kingdom of Israel ruled Ahab, a wicked king. For some reason, Jehoshaphat visited Ahab, who immediately tried to persuade him to join forces against a troublesome Syrian enemy from an area called Ramoth-Gilead. Ahab gathered his own special prophets together. We might call them members of his inner security council, and asked them whether he should go to battle against Ramoth-Gilead or not. The 400 prophets were so soothing to Ahab that they should be called the soothsayers of his kingdom. They all agreed, without dissenting opinions, that Ahab should go into battle and that God would bring him through triumphantly. But Jehoshaphat was not satisfied with the advice of these prophets. In spite of their unanimous agreement, he said, "Is there here not another prophet of the Lord, Israel's God, of whom we may inquire?" 1 Kings 22:7. We can imagine how petulant Ahab must have been when he replied, "There is yet one man by whom we may inquire of the Lord, Micaiah the son of Imlah. But I hate him, for he never prophesies good concerning me, but evil." 1 Kings 22:8. Jehoshaphat insisted that Micaiah be consulted. So an officer was sent to bring him in. When the officer found him, he tried to persuade the prophet to be a good fellow and go along with Ahab's inner security council and tell the king what he wanted to hear. But Micaiah replied, "As the Lord lives, what the Lord says to me, that I will speak." 1 Kings 22:14. He realized as he said this that he was putting his life on the line. When Micaiah was brought before the two kings, Ahab asked him if they should attack Ramoth-Gilead. Micaiah answered in what must have been a tongue-in-cheek manner, "Sure, go on and win. The Lord will give it into your hands." Ahab knew he was being ridiculed and commanded the prophet to say what was really on his mind. In answering, Micaiah showed the boldness that characterized a true prophet. First, he labeled all of the 400 court prophets as liars. Then he predicted that Ahab would be killed in the battle and that the Israeli army would be routed. The chief of false prophets, Ahab's chairman of the Security Council, walked up and slugged Micaiah, probably with the same premonition of fear that made Pashur, the Israeli religious leader, take a whack at Jeremiah. So Micaiah went to jail and Ahab went to battle. But first Micaiah challenged all the people to witness his grade on the test of a prophet. He said, "If you," meaning Ahab, "return in peace, the Lord has not spoken by me." 1 Kings 22:28. Ahab wasn't going to take any chances with this pessimistic prophet Micaiah, so he disguised himself during the big battle. But one of the enemy archers shot an arrow labeled, "To whom it may concern," and in the most amazing and coincidental manner, it struck Ahab in one small exposed place in his armor and killed him. Micaiah passed the test of a true prophet. Ahab and all of his yes-men flunked. What do you say, Isaiah? One of the most astounding prophets of all time was Isaiah, son of Amoz. His brilliant, eloquent, even poetical predictions were made over a 60-year span, 740 to 680 BC, during the reign of 4 successive Judean kings. Isaiah proved himself a prophet by Moses' test many times. One striking incident was during the reign of King Hezekiah. In about 710 BC, a mighty Assyrian army, numbering in the thousands, and commanded by the vicious king Sennacherib, besieged Jerusalem. Isaiah 36:1-2. If you stumble over some of these unpronounceable ancient names, glance at your daily newspaper and notice the tongue twisters assigned to people today. Well, that's a note to me, I guess. Sennacherib was a crafty fellow. He sent his eloquent mouthpiece, a fellow named Rabshakeh, to the people of Jerusalem with a powerful propaganda speech. Rabshakeh, an ancient minister of misinformation, told the people of all the defeats suffered by neighboring countries. This was brainwashing in the craftiest sense. The techniques used were intended to induce the besieged citizens of Jerusalem to surrender without a fight. When King Hezekiah heard how his people were being intimidated, he sent a delegation to Isaiah to plead with him to pray to Jehovah, the God of Israel. Isaiah then made some short-range predictions. He said that a rumor would reach King Sennacherib of internal trouble in his kingdom, and that he would return without attacking Jerusalem. Furthermore, he said that Sennacherib would be assassinated in his own land. It happened just as Isaiah predicted. Jerusalem was spared a certain defeat, and King Sennacherib was killed by his own sons. Isaiah 37:36-38. Isaiah predicts 100 years in the future. Isaiah also predicted that Babylon would completely destroy Judah and carry away all the treasures of Israel. He foretold that the surviving sons of the royal family would be eunuchs in the palace of Babylon. This occurred just a little over 100 years later. Isaiah 39:5-7. 150 years into the future. Isaiah gave an incredible prediction when he foretold that the mighty, invincible Babylonians would be conquered and so completely destroyed by the Medes that Babylon would never be inhabited again. Isaiah 13:17-22. This was an astonishing prediction at that time, since the city of Babylon became one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world and was considered impregnable. Yet, approximately 150 years after Isaiah's prediction, the Medes and Persians besieged the towering walls of Babylon. This was no small feat. Those walls were 150 feet high and so thick that 5 chariots could run abreast around the top. The Medes and Persians were cunning. They dammed the Euphrates River, which ran under the Babylonian wall and through the city. While Babylon was celebrating at a drunken royal ball, the Median army marched along the dry riverbed under the wall and conquered the city. This was the very night that the handwriting on the wall appeared to the arrogant Babylonian king. It read, Mene, Mene, Tekel, Upharsin. Daniel the prophet deciphered it to the drunken mob as follows. Your kingdom has been weighed in the balance and found wanting. It is divided and given to Medes and Persians. That night the Babylonian kingdom fell. Daniel 5:1-31. 200 years in the future. Isaiah predicted that a certain king named Cyrus would see that Jerusalem and the temple were rebuilt by allowing those who wished to do this work to return to the land of their ancestors. Isaiah 44:28-45:4. Almost 200 years after this prediction, a certain Persian king, also named Cyrus, granted royal favor to the Jewish captives left over from Babylon and sent them to Jerusalem with a requisition for materials to rebuild the city. Ezra 1:1-11. The prophet preserved. Many so-called biblical scholars today try to late-date such predictions as Isaiah's to make his prophecies seem to be after the fact. To do this not only violates the consistent witness of the history of those times, but also makes the Jewish people religious charlatans and deceivers. The Jews would have had no reason to keep for posterity those writings of the prophets if they were a fraud. The Israeli prophets were not popular, as we have shown. In the times of Jeremiah, Micaiah, Isaiah, and the others, the odds were against anything they wrote or said being accepted. Yet, they were preserved above all other writings of their day. What made these prophets so special? The answer lies in the test of a true prophet which Moses gave. Their prophecies must all come true. They could not be ignored. We cannot ignore them. They passed the test. Summa cum laude.